Okie dokie. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of something that I hope to be keep as long as running as possible. This is, but is it Jojo stupid? A fun retrospective on more or less everything. And I know that might seem like I'm reaching very far for that, but trust me, it's a fun idea. Just stick around with it. We'll see where this goes. Um, My name is Wilfredo Luna, and I suppose I'm the host. I might have guests on periodically, but for now, it's just gonna be me. So, hope you get comfortable listening to my voice. Anyway, this is the first episode, so we gotta clear everything up. What do I mean by that? What do I mean when I say JoJo? What am I referring to when I say JoJo? Because that's the barometer we're gonna measure everything by. Jojo, when I say that, refers to Jojo no Kimi no Boken, which is a manga and anime that has been running for a long time. And I think 85, 84. Well, no, wait, 87, 87. Yeah. So, Jojo no Kimi no Boken is the barometer by which we're going to be measuring everything. I have a fascination with media as a whole video games, TV, movies, things of that nature. But I'm a bit of a hard nose. I guess you could call me snobby about my taste in things. I have this burning, passionate love for things I consider cool, which is, that's pretty normal. On the flip side, I have this burning, passionate love for things I think are the worst of the worst. And when I say the worst, I mean on a scale of 1 to 10, it's 0. But it being a 0 makes it the coolest thing ever. And then it being a 10 makes it the coolest thing ever. And everything that is either not dumb enough to be JoJo stupid, or at least be close to that, or something that's not good enough for me to consider it cool, means I don't care. So lots of stuff people happen to like, I don't care for because, well, it just doesn't draw me in. Now, JoJo. Why is it that JoJo is what I say is the dumbest possible fucking thing in the world, but also the best thing in the world? Well, I'm gonna try to go through this as cleanly as possible because there is a lot of things to talk about. JoJo started in '87, right? Okay. Thing about that is it's essentially grew out of the '80s fascination with big strong guy who's gonna punch everything until it's over. Jonathan Joestar, whose nickname is JoJo, therefore the name JoJo no Kimi no Bokan. Uh, By the way, JoJo no Kimi no Bokan, because I now realize that that just sounds stupid in only Japanese, it means JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And part 1 was technically known as JoJo no Kimi no Bokan Daiichibun Jonasan Joestar, with Sono Seishin, which is to say, Jonathan Joestar, well, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, part 1, Jonathan Joestar, his youth. So Jonathan grew out of the idea of, I guess for those of you who know Hokuto no Ken or Fist of the North Star, he's kind of just Kenshiro. Except whereas Kenshiro cries whenever bad stuff happens, Jonathan gets aggressive because he's like, I have to correct the wrong. And his name is actually just a reference to a restaurant. Not even much of a restaurant. It's sort of think of it like Japanese Denny's. It's called Jonathan's. And so if you think that's dumb, you haven't even gotten started. A thing I love about JoJo, including the fact that its first lead is named after a fucking Denny's, is everybody's name is a reference to something, and it's not the kind of slight reference where it's like, oh, well, his name is similar to this other word that's like, no. In part 1, the bad guy, for the most of it, the guy who Jonathan hates and like has to fight, even though he doesn't really hate him by the end of it, is Dio Brando. And if Dio sounds familiar, that's because that's Ronnie James Dio, and his last name is Marlon Brando. And Ronnie James Dio has a band called Dio, because, yeah. Now, if you don't know Ronnie James Dio, well, he was the singer for Rainbow, and then he joined Black Sabbath, and then he went solo, and it's a whole thing. You might be familiar with his song, Holy Diver, off of his first album, Holy Diver. It's a really great album, really great song. But yeah, so Dio's dad was named Dario, as in Dario Argento, which I know what you're thinking. You said it was easy to understand. It seems strangely specific. Not necessarily. because although we're starting here, by the end of this, everything is just super overt. So, what ends up happening is Dio becomes a vampire by using a mask that no one really knows where it's from. They think it's Aztec, they're not sure, it's from Mexico, blah blah blah. And he uses the mask and makes himself a vampire. So, how does the mask work? Well, if you put blood on it, it shoots out spikes, and then the spikes fuse to you and then make you a vampire. So, fine. It's Jonathan fighting a vampire. Cool. At first, Jonathan's just a normal guy, so he gets his shit pushed in by the vampire, and his house burns down because, well, he trapped Dio in the house, and they thought that'll kill him, right? He gets him stabbed into like this statue that they have of the goddess of love, and then it's like, well, right. If I didn't say this before, Jonathan's a rich kid. He's like super, super, super rich. He comes from the Joestar family, and they're super rich. So how did Dio even show up? Well, it's like this. Um, Dio's dad, Dario, was going to rob a bunch of dead bodies. As it turns out, they weren't all dead. It was Jonathan's father, George Joestar, who had a crash in a carriage where his wife died, Jonathan's mother, who we never get her name, as far as I know. Yeah, they died in the crash, and then Dario and his wife, who's wow, she's a really pretty lady. It's like, why is she hanging out with him? But whatever. So I remember this correctly because I wrote down this note where he goes to reach for the bodies, and his wife says, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "What are you, stupid? I'm gonna steal their teeth." And I thought, what is that about? Why? For what? For what purposes? And I looked that up, and as it turns out, during the 18th and 19th century, there were a lot of people getting their teeth stolen from the dead because it was like you could make dentures out of it. As a matter of fact, the American Civil War was known as the Great Tooth Boom because of how many people stole the teeth from dead soldiers, which is the kind of information that tells me, wow, the creator of this, Hirohiko Araki, who I will be referring to by his full name like that the entire time, is amazingly knowledgeable and crazy. So, insofar that Dario saves George by accident because he was going to steal his teeth, and then George gets up and goes, "Oh man, you saved me!" And he's like, yeah, totally." To which point, George goes, "All right, so if you ever need a favor, remember my name, and I'll solve it." So what ends up happening is Dario gets old, sick, dies. His wife has already been dead, and Dario's son, Dio Brando, remember what's that bad guy? Dio Brando gets sent to live with the Joestar family, and he becomes Jonathan's adopted brother. And then he proceeds to be a horrible shit to Jonathan for the rest of the opening of the manga, where he beats the shit out of him in a boxing match, like he even throws his thumb in his eye. He makes his friend think that Jonathan's an asshole, and and Jonathan ends up having a little girlfriend, Irina, and then Dio just grabs her and sticks his tongue in her mouth, and then yeah, no, it's not great. And it's that one that finally makes Jonathan lose his shit and find Dio and beat the shit out of him. It's when he beats the shit out of him that the blood ends up on the mask, and then the mask pops out spikes. Dio notices that, Jonathan doesn't, and then we just cut ahead for 10 years. Oh wait, before that, to prove that Dio's a fucking monster, because this is something Hirohiko does all the time in the rest of JoJo. It's if the bad guy kills a dog, he's clearly a bad guy. So, Jonathan has a dog named Danny. His like best buddy in the world. It's amazing. Like that dog saved him from drowning, even though at first they didn't like each other. It's amazing. So Dio throws Danny in the trash bag, and then they throw the trash bag in the incinerator, and then he fucking burns to death. And fortunately, Jonathan isn't home to see him burst out of the giant furnace and on fire and screaming and yelling. No, he just gets home and he's buried. So that's better, you know? I mean, didn't have to watch him die. That sucked. And the butler was crying and he was like, felt really bad because he thought it was his fault. But really, Dio's the one who stuffed him in the trash to begin with because he broke my nose. Fuck that guy. So years pass, and then Jonathan and Dio are like in high school. They're graduating high school. They're gonna get to college, and like Jonathan is gonna be a archaeologist, and Dio is gonna be a lawyer. And then, as it turns out, George Joestar has been getting sick lately, and no one knows why. And Jonathan figures out, hey, this is the same. This is the same way that Dio's dad died. Huh. Wait. Did Dio do it? So then he goes to try to find out where Dio got the poison to start killing his dad. And in the process, he runs into a bunch of homeless people. And the homeless people try to mug him. And then when he takes a giant brutal stab to the arm from a hat with a blade on it. Yeah, like Kung Lao. Anyway, from a hat with a blade on it. The homeless guy who threw the hat looks him in the eyes and goes, "Oh, oh, no, wait. You're doing this for a noble reason. I'm gonna tell all my homeless guy buddies to stop it." And that guy's name is Robert Edward Oscar Speedwagon. And for those of you who can't think about that, Ariel Speedwagon. Yeah, no, get used to that. It's Dio from Johnny James Dio and Ariel Speedwagon. That's what's happening. So they end up going back, and that's when Dio becomes when Dio makes himself a vampire because he gets caught. And he's like, "Fuck all that noise. I'm not going to jail. That's stupid." Makes himself a vampire. Jonathan barely wins, I guess. He ends up hospitalized for a while, and he gets back with Arena, so that's great. Because she ran away after Dio kissed her. Just kissed her because it's just like, I don't know. I don't fully understand the morals of 19th century England, but yeah. So here's what happens. As time passes, and then, everything's been okay. But as it turns out, Dio isn't dead. And a weird Italian guy with a checkered hat shows up, and he says, "Hi, my name is Will Zeppeli." And it's like, "Zeppeli? Why's that?" "Led Zeppelin." "No, shut up. That's what's happening." Okay. So he has a power called Hamon, which is if you breathe properly, it's a breathing technique. That's all it is. If you breathe properly, your body channels the energy of the sunlight, the power of the sun, and it allows you to manipulate it and kill vampires through contact. So the idea becomes, if you breathe properly, you channel the power of the sun, and then you can punch vampires into exploding. Or you could touch stuff and it'll melt because you're powered by the sun. So Hamon means ripple, and the name kind of shows up when Zeppeli is in a river, and he goes like, "Check out this power I got." And then proceeds to punch a rock with a frog on it, and Jonathan's like, "No, the frog!" And what happens is the rock under the frog splits in half in a giant explosion of bright light. But the frog itself is fine. The frog just lands in the water and swims away. And Jonathan's like, "Wow, how the hell would that work?" He's like, the Hamon only hurts vampires and the undead. And it's like, fuck you, that's insane. Fuck you, that's just insane. So in their mission to go hunt Dio, basically Zeppeli punches Jonathan in the gut and then charges him up with Hamon, and his arm is fixed. He's actually stronger than before. He's like, "So you're gonna teach me how to do it?" He's like, "Exactly, because I'm not gonna kill Dio. You gotta kill Dio because you helped him become a vampire." He's like, "All right, fine." Him and his buddy Speedwagon get into a carriage with Mr. Led Zeppelin, and they just sort of ride away. And in riding away, they get into like a tunnel where there's a horse has like its head decapitated. And they're like, "Wow, that's fucked." And then a man comes out of the horse's head stump, and he flexes, and knives come out his body, and it's Jack the Ripper, and he's a vampire now. Shut up. So then Zeppeli gives Jonathan a glass of wine, and first he sort of fucks up Jack the Ripper, and he's scared, so he runs away into tunnels. And then he gives Jonathan a glass of wine, and is like, "Jonathan, if you want to be able to be good at the Hamon, you have to be able to kill Jack the Ripper by using Hamon and not spilling a single bit of this wine. If you spill it, I'll kill you." Well, no, I think his exact words were something to the effect of, "I'll never train you and I'll leave you alone." But it's basically killing him because there's zombies and vampires now trying to kill him. Yeah, okay. I have only described maybe the beginning of all this. There's a lot that's gonna happen, and I think that's giving you the idea of how Jojo works, right? Okay. Now, what if I told you part two, which is at the end of all this, and says, "Hey, completely forget all that stuff. Ancient Aztec humans, who create vampires." How does that feel? Yeah, no, okay. Now, what if I told you the names were AC/DC, Wham, and Cars, as in the Cars? Yeah, okay. And, like, if you think, "Oh, now it's just jumping all the bands," no, 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 no. Back in part one, there were guys just named Dyer, and then his buddy, Straits, and then the Grandmaster, Tom Petty. I'm not fucking kidding. Like, that. One of the big bad guys is named Tarkus, and I know that may not be super, reachable for everybody, but Tarkus is an Emerson, Lake and Palmer album. I love ELP. God damn it. Fucking, and there's more vampires, and then, like, Dio has this ability to shoot blood lasers at his eyes. And then it seems like his lasers, and then, like, the name of the move is Space Ripper Stingy Eyes. But actually what it's supposed to be in the narrative is that Dio, as a vampire, is super capable of manipulating blood. And, like, the manipulation of the blood is how he shoots the fucking blood missiles out his eyes. but they work like lasers because they're so high pressure. It's like a high pressure water stream that just cuts through everything. Yeah, okay, that's part one. And then after all that, Jonathan dies at the end, but Dio's supposed to die with him because he has his head, and yeah, they're in a ship and it's burning, and it's sad. That's sad. And so we move on to part two, Battle Tendency, which is Jonathan's grandson, Joseph, who's a dirty cheater. I say that just because I don't like him all that much, but quite honestly, his gimmick is, uh, he thinks ahead of everything because he's so smart, and therefore plans so that he doesn't have to do like a straight up fight like Jonathan did. Whereas Jonathan would use his Hamon and then charge it up into what he called sunlight yellow overdrive and just like to the Hokuto Hyakuretsu Ken, where like Kenshiro punches the dude 100 times and then he explodes. Where Jonathan did the same thing except it was called sunlight yellow overdrive. So instead of that, Joseph doesn't do that. Joseph plans stuff out. Joseph does have Hamon, but where like Jonathan had to learn Hamon, Joseph just does it, and he doesn't know he can do it. It opens up with Joseph in New York, just walking around, and a little black kid steals his pocket. Oh yeah, that's 1930 something at this point. I think 39, 38. Yeah, 38. So it's 1938, and then he gets mugged by a little black kid who like steals his wallet, and then like he sees that cops are beating up the black kid and saying really racist shit, and he goes, guess I'll help him, and he goes to help the kid, and then he goes like, and then he tells the cops, hey, he's my friend, I gave him my wallet. He's like, really? You want to start some shit? And then using Hamon with a bottle of Coca-Cola, he makes the cap shoot off because he pressurizes the soda inside of it using Hamon, and it snaps the finger of one of the cops because they had a gun on him. So yeah, right. And Joseph just knows how to do it. Forget it. Like he doesn't need to be taught. He just knows how to do it. So you remember that guy who said was named Straits from part one? Yeah, well he's back, and this time he became a vampire and became like super evil because he didn't want to get old. Because that's it. That's kind of it. So then when Joseph is beating Straits, he tell by the way he tricks Straits with like a scarf with grenades on it. Yeah, no, that's kind of what he does. He has a habit of saying, this is what you're gonna say next, because is supposed to show you how far he's planned out. So he says, this is what you're gonna say next, and then he says what they say, and then when they say it, they go, how'd you know that? And then he fucks them up because it's supposed to imply that Joseph thought so far ahead he already knows what they're gonna do, and therefore can defeat them. Right? Yeah. So it's insane. So fine. So he straight tells him, "Oh, just so you know, I didn't actually kill Mr. Speedwagon because the reason Joseph sort of freaks out, him and his grandma, is that they hear Speedwagon got super murdered by Straits, and they're like, wow, what the fuck? I thought he was a cool guy." And it's like, no, he's not. And then when he's fighting Straits after, like on top of the Brooklyn Bridge, he says, "Oh, hey, by the way, I didn't kill Speedwagon. I knocked him out, and I threw them into the river because if their blood had stayed on the ground, they would have revived something." And it's like, revived what? He's like, shut up. And then he uses Hamon and explodes himself because, yeah, he could do that despite being a vampire. Whatever. So Joseph goes to Mexico to go find out what the pillar thing was about, and it turns out Nazis are there. Yeah, Nazis, because it's 1938, so Nazis. They run into the Nazis, and they're investigating the pillar thing, and there's this guy, Stroheim, Rudolf von Stroheim. He has hair like Guile, for those of you who are wondering what that's about. Like, okay, whatever. No, wait, he has Guile hair. Yeah, no, because that's Jojo. So he has Guile hair, and then he, like, sacrifices a bunch of poor Mexican peasants. Like, he gets them all super murdered, and then trains their blood together, and then feeds it into the pillar. And out of the pillar busts a giant human, who's like a rock, who's like a man. Except he's wearing, like, just a little, I don't know, sort of, like, briefs? I don't know how to call that. Anyway, I don't know what to call that. But yeah, so he says, I will name you Santana because of the Santana mountain range. And it's like, okay, so his name is Santana. Fine, whatever. Carlos Santana. I get it. Shut up. So Santana ends up being super, super, super skilled at tons of things that are almost inhuman. Like after hearing them speak through the tiny air vents, because there's no other way to move in the room they got him in. After hearing them speak in the tiny air vents, he figures out the structure of the language and can speak full sentences that they've never used before. He just knows now. So they send a monster in there, like a vampire, and then like Santana eats it through his skin. He stays still, and the thing jumps, and then like it's like not so strong are you, Pillar Man, and then you just watch it become consumed by Santana's body. Yeah, okay, so that's these are the Pillar Men, and then after like Santana shoves himself through the vents and shows up, it turns out he can go inside of people like through tiny orifices. So like he goes in through a guy's nose and tears his body open, but like the guy isn't feeling pain because the Pillar Man can nullify anguish in the regular human body. Right. So remember when I told you they were ancient Aztec people? This is one of them. Yeah, this is the Pillar Man, Santana. Now I know what you're thinking. What about those other three guys you said? Wham, ACDC, and Cars. Well, you hold on a second. So here's what it is. After Joseph gets in and finds Mr. Speedwagon, him and Stroheim, together they kill Santana. Stroheim dies in the process, but whatever. So the way he does, well, he doesn't technically kill Santana, but what he does is he gets Santana caught in the sunlight, because much like vampires, their weakness is sunlight. So when he gets caught in the sunlight, he turns into stone, and then he gives him to the Speedwagon Foundation, which is the giant thing that corporation that Speedwagon founded after Jonathan died to help to just help investigate supernatural shit, because he saw vampires, he saw Dio. It's a mess. So yeah, so he goes, hey, and as Stroheim is dying, he goes, by the way, this isn't the only Pillar Man. And he goes, like, really? He's like, yeah, there's 3 other ones in Italy. You have to go find them. Stop them, Mr. Joestar, do it. And Joseph's like, okay. So when they go to Italy, there's like a wall with 3 guys, and then like one of them is a little hole on his head, and the hole opens and starts like making a giant wind tunnel, and it kills the Nazis who are investigating, and it's the blood that's used to wake up the other 3. And yeah, so it's Wham, ACDC, and Cars, and they're walking around. And by then, Joseph has met his new buddy, Caesar Zeppeli, grandson of William Zeppeli, who you might remember as the guy just named after Led Zeppelin. Right, so Caesar doesn't have a thing so much as just being the fact that he's named after Led Zeppelin. So, yeah, him and Jonathan hate each other. I mean, Joseph hate each other because, well, they just don't get along. Joseph is a rough and tumble kid. Caesar believes in honor and dignity, and he's all obsessed with family because he actually says "we Italians" for a lot of his explanations about his feelings. So I mean, if that's how they are, that's how they are. Whatever. So Joseph, Wham, and Speedwagon go see if the Pillarmen can be stopped, and as it turns out, they've already killed everybody, and that's bad. And then Caesar's buddy Mark, who was driving them to visit the Pillarmen, has also gets split in half. So Joseph is super, super pissed. So Caesar is super, super pissed because this is his friend, Mark. And then he goes and he gets his shit pushed in. And then they go like, wow, you suck. Caesar has a special ability. He coats his clothes in soap. What does that have to do with anything? Well, Caesar uses Hamon, just like Joseph. But unlike Joseph, he knows how to use Hamon. So by making the giant soap on make all the soap on his clothes work, he stretches out bubbles, and then his bubble-charged Hamons. Yeah, bubbles charged with Hamon. And that's his secret move, or whatever. He has a little fight with Joseph to demonstrate how he can do it, but it's kind of unimportant because, well, no, I'll get into that. Fine. So then, Wham and Cars, well, Wham stays behind while ACDC and Cars just keep walking, and Wham fucks up just Caesar with, like, no problem. And then the way they talk, as it turns out, it's that, those guys, well, the Pillar Men, they say, oh man, you Hamon tribe is so douchey. And it's like, wait, what is he talking about? It's because the Pillar Men are thousands upon thousands of years old, and that the people who use Hamon are actually descendants of a special tribe of people who have been able to use Hamon for millions of years. So, as it turns out, maybe it wasn't specifically a breathing technique, but I don't actually know what it means anymore, because Jonathan had to learn, Joseph just has it, but then the way the Pillar Men say it, it's like, oh no, well, people have always had it. But not everyone, because there's normal humans, and then there's Hamon tribe. I don't really know what that's supposed to mean, and that's kind of why I think JoJo's retarded. And, like, there's a part where Cars steps on Wham's shadow, and Wham kicks, and you think, oh, that's going to come up later. That's probably going to be how Joseph beats him, by tricking him into kicking something. No! Not at all. Joseph beats Wham by using like zombies. I, I, I can't begin describing. You know what's the best part? After all this, part two is over. Completely forget about Hamon. Hamon's stupid. Forget about it. It's stupid. Stupid, 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 stupid. Forget it. It's lame. Um, so what ends up happening by the very end, Joseph and Caesar have together beaten ACDC. Caesar dies, and then Joseph beats Wham using like cheating techniques like zombies. And then Joseph single-handedly fights Cars, and then gets lucky, and Cars gets shot into space. So that's how he wins. A lot of people are around, a lot of people die, and then I don't and like in the process of fighting Cars, Joseph gets his hand cut off, and now he has a cool robot hand. That's kind of everything you need to actually know. If you want to get into the nitty gritty, I recommend checking it out for yourself. There was an anime made for it pretty recently, and I think it's a pretty good show because it covers like part one and two. The thing I don't like about it so much, about the way it covers part one and two, is that so the first season I guess was more or less 24, 26 episodes. The first nine are part one, and it covers all the major points of part one. And then the rest cover part two, which it covers all the main points of part two. But it ignores some stuff. For example, in the Fan of Blood manga, like you watch Danny burst into flames and scream and die. Like it's not great. It's not great. But in the anime, they just straight cut to the burial. You hear the scratching on the furnace, but then it just cuts straight to the burial. Because I mean, why would you want to watch a dead dog on fire? Yeah. And then for part two, well, I don't think it cuts anything major, but I don't know. There's some stuff that always looks way more brutal in the manga than it ever does in the anime because the anime has to be adjusted for television, you know? Right. So, yeah. And then we get to part 3. And what's part 3 about? Ghosts. Shut up. I'm not joking. Ghosts. Well, technically, the ghosts are Hamon, which is a whole other thing I have to talk about. So, now it's Joseph's grandson, Jotaro Kujo. So, Jotaro's in jail. Why? He beat up a bunch of people, he sent them to jail. And he beat up a bunch of people, he sent them to the hospital, and then he was in jail. And then when the cops told him, you could leave, he was like, no, I got a ghost haunting me. And they're like, what? He's like, yeah, he's got a ghost haunting me. And then his mom goes to the prison and tries to get him out. Holly, Joseph's daughter. So, goes to prison, tries to get him out, and he's like, I'm not gonna leave, there's a ghost. And then she notices his cell is loaded with stuff like manga and a motorcycle and shit. And it's like, what is it? What is it? And he goes, well, whenever I want something, the ghost brings it to me. And I'm afraid that the ghost might kill people, so I'm gonna keep the ghost on me. So I'm gonna stay here in jail. So Holly's freaking out, and then her father shows up. Joseph, you like Joseph, you remember him. Mr. I know what you're thinking, and cheating, and guns, and grenades. Anyway, he shows up with his buddy, Mohammed Avdal, a neat Egyptian fella. So they walk on in to go see Jotaro, and then Joseph tells Avdal, hey, get him out the cell. And he's like, you don't think you can actually beat me, I'm infected by a ghost. And he's like, what do you mean by ghost? And then like Jotaro takes the cop's gun with the ghost hand, and then tries to shoot himself in the head. And then when he does, a ghost hand stops the bullet inches from his face. He puts it almost point blank, and then the ghost is that fast. So Joseph tells Avdol to get him out, and he does get him out by using his own stand, a giant burning chicken man named Magician's Red. It's a chicken head on like a really buff man body, and it's fire related. So what ends up happening is Avdol uses his stand to fuck up Jotaro, and Jotaro decides, I'm not gonna take this shit, and he gets outside, and he steps outside, and then Avdol sits down, and then Jotaro goes, hey, I thought we were gonna fight, and then Avdol says, no, I just got told to get you at the cell, look down, and then his foot is out the cell, he's like, man, fuck you. So then Joseph goes, yeah, that's not a ghost, that's a stand, and he's like, what's a stand? It's like, it's your manifestation of your psychic powers, and it's like, psychic powers? Well, technically, here's the thing about stand. The way stand is written, he writes it like phonetically, sutando, right? But the way he actually writes it in the kanji form, because he has a sense to write it, is yu hamon. So the yu hamon means ghostly ripple, which is in reference to the other hamon from before. So technically, Yeah, the stand is supposed to be Ghost Hamon, which is stupid, I know. But instead, we're just gonna go with stand because that's what he calls it, and it's a ghost. It's just a ghost that represents you and your desires, and it's powered by what you want. So that's what it is. Now I know what you're thinking. All right, so ghosts. What's this about? Well, um, other people are. Jotaro didn't have a stand until recently. Now, there are some people who are born with stands. Other people just get their stands. So what's that about? Well, remember how I told you Dio died in part one? No, I didn't. His head stayed inside of the casket. He was decapitated at the time. His head stayed in the casket, and then it decided to attach itself to Jonathan's body, thereby making itself big pimp monster thing. Get used to me saying the phrase big pimp blank, because I'm going to say that a lot. That's just how I talk. Anyway, yeah, so now a lot of people related to their family, the Joestar family, are just starting to have stands now. As a result, Jotaro's mom ends up sick because her stand is appearing, but she doesn't have the spiritual will to control it. So that's stupid. But yeah, so while that's happens, Jotaro gets jumped at school by a guy with a stand. His name is Kakuin. And then as it turns out, he's being controlled by Dio by a flesh bud on his forehead. And then Joseph tells him, "We can remove the flesh bud, but if we do it wrong, he'll die." And then Jotaro just takes his stand and goes, "Fuck it, I'm doing it," and rips it off. And he nails it apparently because his stand's power is precision among other things. So here's the thing about the stands. The stands are named Arcana Color, like that. So, as I told you before, Big Chicken Man, Avdol's stand is named Magician's Red. Joseph's stand is a little bunch of vines that lets him like take spirit photographs, which those are his words, and they let him see stuff from far away. So he takes his stand is Hermit Purple. Jotaro has to pick a card from an Arcana deck, and then Avdol tells him, you've picked the star, the symbol of success, the symbol of dreams," and he explains the Arcana reading behind the star, and goes, "Your stand shall be named Star Platinum," and that's that. So now you know Star Platinum is a thing, and Kakuin's thing is Hierophant Green. It's a giant tentacle man with strings, and it shoots emeralds. And yeah, and it has 20 meters of range. And why do I know that? Because stands have stats. Uh, it's like a little circle that they make up with all the stats. I'm actually trying to remember what the hell they all are. It's power, destruction, destructive capacity. I stands are. The thing about stands is that there's tons of different kinds of stands because it's all relative to the user. So it's power, speed, range, um, staying power, like how bad it can be fucked up and be okay, precision, uh, and development potential, which means like how good can it get by the time this is all over. So Stan's abilities can actually be developed by the better that they know, by the more that they learn their stand. So Star Platinum starts with a development potential of A, but by the time he shows up in Stone Ocean, and it's been a bunch of years, his development potential is C, because he's already learned a lot of what Star Platinum has to be able to do. Yeah, stuff like that. And damage is damage and yada yada. If you want, you can take notes. I wouldn't recommend it because if you listen to this at any point, you can just hear me go on and on about this. So what ends up happening is they decide, hey, if we want to save your mother, Jotaro, and save the lives of everyone who might be killed by Dio, we have to go find him and kill him. And along the way, they run into bad stand users who are being used by Dio to try to kill them. And lots of dumb shit happens. So first guy is the Tower of Grey. He controls a little fly that like tears up his moves super fast, and it's almost impossible to catch. And they run into him on a plane, so they kind of can't fight him on the plane because he can move a lot faster being a tiny bug, versus they're limited by the fact that their stands are giant men, sometimes with chicken heads. Yeah, and by the end they beat him, but as a result, the Tower of Grey had already killed the pilots, so the plane was crashing, and they crashed near Hong Kong. And then in Hong Kong, they run into Polnareff, who becomes their buddy after they beat him. His stand is Silver Chariot. So Polnareff's entire reason for fighting is because he has a sister named Sherry, and she got murdered and raped by a stand user. It was bad. And so he wants to find that man, the man with two left hands, and then so he could go kill him. And then he goes like, "I will join you on your mission." And they're like, "Okay, cool, whatever." And they end up fighting a guy who's named. Okay, so here's the thing. Remember I told you, oh, you constantly run into guys with band names? It starts around here. Paul Narev is named after a French musician. That's super real. Mohammed Avdal is. I'm pretty sure Avdal is like a Nigerian musician or something. I give me a second. Let's see if I can find this real quick because I know it's a fuck. Yeah, no, the Abdul is actually Abdul because it's supposed to be Paula Abdul. Fuck me. There you go. There you go. There you go. Look at that. Look at that. God damn it, Jojo. Okay. So they run into a guy on a boat, and then he's impersonating the captain. Guess what the captain's name is? Tennille, because Captain and Tennille. And then his stand is about water, so they end up fighting in the water. And then they, after their boat crashes, because the water was the boat was sabotaged by the stand. Also, the stand was called Dark Blue Moon, so you might know Blue Moon. I don't know, but Blue Moon is in fact a song. Anyway, it's a really old song from like the doo-wop bands of the 50s. So they fight Blue Moon, and then after they survive, they get off on a little lifeboat, and by then they picked up a little girl who has a knife. They never actually give her a name, but in the show they give her a name because they figured they have to give her a name at some point. So it's Anne. So they pick up a little girl, and they're riding on the little lifeboat, and they end up running into a giant freighter, like a big, big, big boat. And then they find that the boat is empty except for an orangutan, and accidents keep happening, and they're like, "This is weird." So then, as it turns out, the orangutan puts on a jacket, puts on a hat, is reading porn, and smoking a pipe. It's like, wait, why is this orangutan doing this now? And then like Anne is going off and taking a shower, and the orangutan shows up and is clearly gonna rape her. And I was like, what the fuck is happening? And as it turns out, the boat is a stand. Yeah, the boat is a stand. The boat is named Strength. And you know what the fuck its user is called? The user is the orangutan, and the orangutan's name is Forever because his whole name is Wu Tang Forever. God fucking, Jesus. Monkey's name is Wu Tang Forever. Jotaro beats him, the boat disappears, and they end up like in the lifeboat, and then they get to Singapore. They get to Singapore, Polnareff's in his hotel room, and then a man called Devo shows up. It's Devo the Curse, and he's like, "I'm gonna fuck you up." And then he goes like, "No, you're not." Polnareff beats the shit out of Devo, and then Devo goes like, "Haha, you're stupid. That's what my power needs." And then he disappears, and it's like, "What's that about?" A little doll shows up. How many of you people know Child's Play? You know, Chucky the Murderer doll? Yeah, okay. So his little doll is called Ebony Devil, and its power is relative to how pissed Devo is at someone. So the more someone hurts him, the stronger Ebony Devil becomes. Now here's the thing about stands. What happens to the stand affects the user, and what happens to the user affects the stand. So why is that important? Well, because Polnareff ends up beating Ebony Devil, shreds it to nothing, and then Devo the Cursed on the other side of town just explodes into blood because he's dead now. Yeah, okay, so a lot of stuff ends up happening. You run into like the Rubber Soul. Yeah, that's his name. The Beatles album, and his Stand Yellow Temperance. You run into the Emperor, who's Whole Horse, which I actually don't know if his name is supposed to be a reference to something. No, wait, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. No, I know it. I know. Hall and Oates. It's Hall and Oates. Hall and Oates. Don't ask me. Shut up. Anyway, and then the Emperor is Jay Guile because I love Centerfold. Jay Guile Band. Jay Guile Band has a great song. Centerfold. My angel is a centerfold. Anyway, as it turns out, Jay Guile is the man with two left hands and the hanged man. So then, Whole Horse's stand is the Emperor, and it's just a gun. It's a magic gun that when he shoots a bullet, he gets to decide where the bullet curves. So that's cool, I guess. And yeah, so Jay Guile and Whole Horse work together to try to kill the guys. They sneak up on Avdol. Avdol gets shot in the head, and like they think he's dead, and then like Polnareff ends up killing Jay Guile, and Whole Horse runs away like a coward because Whole Horse is happy being number 2. He doesn't want to fight all that much. So yeah, they drive off. Polnareff is chasing Jay Guile, and as it turns out, the Hangman, it seems like it shows up in mirrors, But actually, um, the way Hanged Man works is it works as a beam of light that travels from reflection to reflection. So it exists in a mirror world. Eventually, Polnareff traps Jay Guile by kicking dirt in a kid's eye, so that way Hanged Man has to leave the kid's eye because he was hiding in the kid's eye. Yeah, I know. I never said JoJo made sense. That's why I love it so much. Anyway, once it comes out, Polnareff uses what the fuck, Silver Chariot and smashes it, and then yeah, Jay Gile's dead, and then he kills Jay Guile, and then he tells Jay Guile like that's revenge for his sister, and they continually have massive amounts of adventures. They go all the way to Egypt, and then Egypt takes a long time. So they run into an old lady named Enya, and she has the power of the Empress, and it's like a giant ghost thing. They run into Justice, who's like just a fog creature, and he hides underground to not have to fight. Uh, ZZ Top uses that's his name. ZZ Top uses Wheel of Fortune, which is a car. This is the Steely Dan and the Lovers. I think you're starting to understand the theme here, right? Yeah. Now, I could discuss like every little intimate detail of JoJo, but I don't think that's necessary for you to understand. This is insane. There is a sword that is possessed by the god Anubis, which is actually a stand, and the way that ends up working is that Anubis was a stand, and originally it belonged to its owner, and then the owner died, but the stand stayed alive, so it stayed inside the sword. He possesses a man named Chaka, and he possesses a barber named Khan, and then he possesses a little kid, and he possesses Polnareff. So what does that tell you? My personal favorite is Mariah Carey, the user of Bastet, the stand of magnetism. It's a little electrical outlet. And if you touch the electrical outlet, you are now magnetic, and then she gets to fuck you up. And yes, her name is Mariah Carey. Also, I guess as per specific to Mariah Carey, the camera fucks her legs a lot. So that's, yeah, no, because she's Mariah Carey. And yeah, by the end, she gets crushed to death. Well, it's weird because a lot of times they say they get crushed and then they're not, but they're not dead. So who's to say? One of my personal favorites, since we're just gonna keep moving on. Besides describing all the, see, part 3 is a fight of the week kind of thing, where every chapter or every other chapter it's a new guy they're fighting, and then that's it. Then when they win, they just keep on moving. So the Stardust Crusaders, by the way, that's what part 3 is called, Stardust Crusaders. Part 1 is called Phantom Blood, cause vampires. Part 2 is called Battle Tendency. I have no idea why. Probably because Joseph is an asshole who likes to scrap a lot. And part 3 is Stardust Crusaders, because the star, the symbol that Jotaro got for Star Platinum, and they're off going on a mission to go kill friggin' Dio. So yeah, the Stardust Crusaders get a new buddy who's a dog, and it's like, what's this dog gonna do? Well, this dog is a stand. The Fool. Yeah, okay, it's a stand of sand. So, also the way they explain the dog, his name is Iggy, cause Iggy Pop. Yeah, so the dog, apparently he was leading a gang of dogs in New York at the time, and the Speedwagon Foundation captured him. It was like, he could probably be helpful. He's a shitty friend. He's a shitty friend, that dog. He likes to shit in people's hats like Jotaro, or, fart in people's faces like Polnareff. Dog is not a good friend. So, but the dog has a one-on-one battle with another stand user that belongs to the bad guys, and it's a bird. It's a falcon with a hat, and the falcon's name is Pet Shop, because the Pet Shop Boys exist. Yeah. So then the bird's power, its stand is Horus, and it uses ice powers, and then so Iggy and Pet Shop have a fight where Iggy closes Pet Shop's mouth when he's about to do the giant ice shot, and that's how he explodes and dies. It's nuts. All right, so besides Pet Shop, we should talk about the other great fucking stand user from part 3, Vanilla Ice. I know what you're thinking. Vanilla Ice. That's stupid. No. Vanilla Ice is amazing because the stand is called Cream, like the band. And the stand's ability is it creates a portal into a void, and no one knows where the void leads, but Vanilla Ice can hide inside the void, and it just destroys everything. So Vanilla Ice kills fucking Avdol. Avdol wasn't dead, as it turns out, after he got shot in the head by a whole horse. No, he was in the hospital. They pick him up eventually, and then Polnareff is super happy. Cause like, well, Avdol shows up, and Polnareff goes, "Oh my God, it's Avdol!" And then Avdol does his catchphrase where he snaps his fingers and says, "Yes, I am." And yeah, it's when they're fighting. What's his face? Justice. Yeah, and he's like, "It's Avdol! Yay!" And so it turns out he's not dead, right? But he's dead now because Vanilla Ice murdered the shit out of him. Vanilla Ice sucks him into the portal with cream, and then it only leaves his forearms and his hands. Polnareff loses his shit. Iggy saves Polnareff from another fight after getting his shit pushed in. And then Polnareff thinks, alright, I'm gonna die protecting Iggy. And then Iggy uses the last of his strength to save Polnareff, and he dies. So Vanilla Ice single handedly killed two of the Stardust Crusaders without any problem. Right. So, anyway. Polnareff, it turns out that Vanilla Ice is a vampire. Polnareff stabs him in the head with a silver chariot, and then he's like, he doesn't die, and he goes like, "Why aren't you dead?" He's like, "Cause Lord Dio made me a vampire, so that way I'm better than everyone else." And then Polnareff just tricks him into walking into the sun, and he explodes and dies. And he goes like, "That was for Iggy and Avdol. I love my friends." And then we go back to them. It turns out Dio did not leave Egypt yet. So they went to his weird little pyramid, and they're like, "He must be here," and he's not. It was just Vanilla Ice. But then he's in Cairo. So they go to Cairo, and then they fight him, and then it's all over. Kakyoin dies in the process. He gets blown up. Well, he gets his stomach punched open by Dio. Because Dio's power is... So he has a stand, because he's using Jonathan's body. That's how kind of this works. He has a stand called The World, which the world's power is he stops time. Yeah, kind of hard to fight that. But what ends up happening is Jotaro Star Platinum learns how to stop time, and he wins. And after Joe Polnareff and Joseph almost die, Jotaro gets really mad, and he clashes with Dio for the last couple times, and he just shatters his body. When Dio goes for a kick, Jotaro goes for a punch, and he shatters his leg. Uh, it's a mess. My head kind of hurts, and I haven't even begun discussing like the fact that there are 5 more parts. There's part 4, part 5, part 6, part 7, and we're on to part 8, where there are rock people who are essentially alternate universe version of the Pillar Man. It's part 4 is my favorite. Let me just say that. Part 4 is the best because there's a guy whose power is literally I touch things, they explode, and then he makes it I can blow up time and go back in time, but my other explosions still work. His name is Yoshikawa Kira. He is a serial killer with a hand fetish. One day when he was a kid, he saw a picture of the Mona Lisa and he got a boner, and he was like, "This is my life now." That's pretty much it. He kills women and keeps their hands, and he does everything with their hands. He eats with them, and like according to the lore written by Higuraki, when in like interviews, he wipes his ass with them. He uses paper to wipe his ass with the hand because he's a crazy person and just a fucking horrible serial killer. But I like him the best because, okay, so compared to Dio, who was just gonna be, oh, I want to be the richest person on the planet in part 1. I want to be a god. And in part 2, the Pillar Man, who are like, we just want to achieve our ultimate form. And then part 3, Dio, who's like, I just want to be like the best person in the world. Yoshikawa Kira just kind of wants to be left alone. But the problem with being left alone is he's a serial murderer. So they're not gonna do that. Why would you leave a serial murderer alone? That's insane. No. No, you're a serial murderer. And as a matter of fact, the good guys don't even get involved until their friend is murdered by the serial murderer. Yeah, and part 4 introduces the concept that, well, the stands aren't just the manifestation of your spirit energy. Stands are actually like the representation of your desires at that moment, along with what it is your spirit energy. So Yoshikawa Kira's ability to blow stuff up, it's not actually an explosion, it's an implosion. They blow inward and disappear. And his stand is called Killer Queen, because Queen is a great band. So his stand is called Killer Queen, and if he touches something, he can blow it up and it implodes. And the reason for that is he's a serial killer, so he wants Killer Queen to be able to get rid of evidence. So when he got his stand reflected his greatest desire at that moment. And as you run through all the guys in part four, you got your radio tower, Superfly. You got Echoes, which transforms multiple times. You got the hand, which just erases things with its right hand. It represents part of the person, the stand user, and what it is that they want to do or what they would want the most at that given moment in time. It's actually pretty interesting, and it makes JoJo all that much more interesting, but it doesn't remove the fact that it's ghosts and teenagers and also regular ghosts and then special sun ghosts. Also, serial killers and vampires and zombies and all of these other things. There's a guy who might be an alien part 4, and no one is ever sure whether or not he's an alien by the end of it. Also, everything is named after a band, all at the same time. Just never stops being named after a band. And then at part like as the parts go on, the idea behind the ghost gets more complex. Like in part 5, there's a guy with a gun and he shoots it and you think, "Oh, is it like the Emperor? Is that what his stand is going to be?" No, actually his stand is magical tiny bullets. Well, ghost bullets. I call them magic, but they're not. They're tiny ghost bullets that fly around him and kick the regular bullets around. So if he runs out of regular bullets, his tiny ghost bullets aren't gonna help. Also, he has to feed his ghost bullets. They don't do shit if they don't eat. They explicitly tell him they work for food. Yeah. Also, guess what the name of the stand is? Sex Pistols. Ah, yeah, bands every day. Bands or albums or songs. Love Deluxe and fucking. Oh right, this guy's power is to make food that heals you. His food little look like little his stand looks like little radishes. He puts them into the food. Stand's called Pearl Jam. There's Red Hot Chili Peppers, Bad Company. There's a lot of things that I do not have the time to cover. But what I want you to understand is, if you at any point heard all this and thought to yourself, "This is insane and retarded," yeah, that's why I love JoJo. So, whereas some people would hear that and go, "That's stupid. I don't want to be involved in this. That just sounds dumb." To me, it's the perfect amalgam of every dumb thing I've ever wanted. It adds. See, I there's lots of manga and anime and stuff like that that exists out there where it's guy has powers and then he develops the powers and gets better. When he loses, he doesn't really lose. He always gets up and saves the day. And there's a lot of stuff like that. It's an entire subgenre of shonen manga, and I I liked it a lot when I was a kid, but as I got older, I didn't really care for it anymore. And you know what? That's fine. But JoJo is a version of that I can still enjoy because every single time I get involved, I don't think I'm actually going to fully understand it because of all the things that go on involved with that. It's insane. It's stupid. And it's just the level of stupid where I can laugh at it and still have fun. And that's why I love Jojo no Kimi no Boken so much. Everything about it. The fact that there's band names that, like, especially for me, who's like a huge music person, I didn't spend 10 years of my life playing guitar for nothing. Like, I really do love music. So then the chance to see, "Oh, hey, that's a great band. Oh, that's a cool power. Oh, this is insane. I love all of this. I can enjoy it both for what it is and for what it looks from the outside perspective because it's insane. But that doesn't make me hate it. Instead, I just love it all the more because it's so insane. There's nothing like it. That is why this show is called But Is It JoJo Stupid? Because I want to talk about all the dumb things I've seen in my life and see if it's just gets close to that kind of dumb where I can fully enjoy it. Yeah, where I can enjoy it ironically. Even if it may not be enjoying it for in its intended style, that I can still have fun with what I'm watching and get into it to one degree or another. I like dumb shit. I don't know about you. But hopefully, if you continue to listen to this, then it means you like it too, or that you're capable of appreciating it the way I do. So that's the idea. And this was just covering the first 3 parts. I didn't even, and I didn't even get into specific, intimate detail. For that, I would recommend genuinely watching the show. The show covers parts 1, 2, and 3, and 4 up until now. No one is sure if they're ever going to get to part 5. Part 5 is the most popular part in Japan, so I would imagine that they do, but you never know. Budgets and stuff, you know? They're making a live action movie of the first half of Part 4 soon. So if that's going to date this, I think you understand where I'm at right now. And I'm actually really excited for that because Part 4 is my favorite part. The protagonist of Part 4, Josuke Higashikata, is Joseph's illegitimate son. Joseph at some point cheated on his wife. Even he doesn't remember when. And yeah. And then Josuke was born, and Josuke ended up with a stand at 5, and his stand, Crazy Diamond, named after the Pink Floyd song Shine On You Crazy Diamond, has the best power ever, I think. It's it's a punch man insofar that, like Star Platinum, it punches really fast and it's really strong and it's really aggressive and it can withstand a lot of damage. But Crazy Diamond is the first one in a line of punch man stands that have a bonus caveat. So Star Platinum has the ability to freeze time. That's its punch man power. And there's a lot of other punch mans that do the same thing, where all they do is punch really fast, but then they all get one thing. Josuke's Punchman bonus is the ability to return things to their original state. Now I know how that sounds. That's just like, oh, is it like you heal, or is it just broken, or is it? So here's the thing: Josuke can actually technically manipulate anything. So, and the first time he shows up, he breaks a guy's nose for making fun of his hair, because that's Josuke's big thing. Is he's upset whenever somebody makes fun of his hair. He breaks this guy's nose, and then uses Crazy Diamond to fix his nose. But instead of fixing it properly, he fixes it as it is, leaving him with a broken, busted up nose that cannot be fixed until it's rebroken. Yeah. There's a part where he's getting chased on a motorcycle, and then he breaks a wall, and then reforms a new wall in the space between the two existing walls with the fragments from the old wall. He learns how to make, like, body-seeking bullets out of glass and his own blood with his ability. So the thing about the cool thing about that means that Josuke's friends can't, as long as they don't die, but are grievously injured, Crazy Diamond can return them to full health as long as they're around him. Now, what's the trick to this? Well, Josuke can't heal himself, so whenever he gets hurt, it's a problem. Yeah, I love part 4 the best because, I mean, of all the other parts, it has the most random, fun, wacky days, like to running into Pearl Jam, and then the bad guy is a serial killer. It's not that he's planning to take over the world or whatever. He actually just wants to be left alone, but you can't because he's a serial murderer. So yeah, I would say if you're interested in all of the stuff I've been saying so far and you really want to see how this pans out, you should watch Jojo or read it, or because I mean, if you read it, then you'll be able to catch up a lot faster. I think, depending on your reading ability. All right, well, I feel like I've said enough for today, and I will be back next week with my first version of hey, check out this stupid thing. But also, don't forget the name of the show. This is, but is it JoJo stupid? A fun retrospective on more or less everything.